What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Zach Archer TV, where I'll be talking about all things movie. Where I'll be talking about all things movie and television. All right. Today I'm going to do a little bit of both, but mostly movies. Altogether, this year I watched 53 movies. Well, this year, meaning 2024, I watched 53 movies and 6 television shows to talk about. So very low for me in terms of television shows. Though, to be fair, that is not including any of my reality television, which is most of what I tend to watch. Though I plan to watch a lot more non-reality this year as well. I'm going to do a separate video ranking the reality shows, which is a video I did last year on Tarkaron. I think I'll probably do it here on Zach Archer TV, but I always want to separate them. It's really hard to compare reality TV to regular television, like a scripted show. So I separate the two. But I just tagged on TV at the end of this video because there's not many. It's not really worth making a whole separate video for. All right, so we're going to go through our movies. This is the most movies I've watched in a year that I can remember, probably ever. You know, I said in the game video I did over on Zach Archer Games, that was the most games I had finished in a year. Also, probably the most movies. TV shows, not so much, but overall, really showing up for the year 2024. Now, I have them ordered in the order in which I watched them the order in which I watched them in 2024, not this year anymore. I gotta get over it. I gotta get over that year. But I'm gonna go through and talk about them. I'll let you know, cause there's a bunch of these that I did do reviews for with Alec over on Tarkaron, so I'll let you know if they're available to watch. If not, I'll give you more of my thoughts here. It's all gonna be spoiler free. I'm not gonna just expect you to want to be spoiled on a random assortment of movies here. So, but I can give my recommendation or not for these. First up is The Color Purple, which released at the very end of last year. That's always a pain with these December movies, is because like it's a 2023 movie, but it's always gonna, more often than not, it's gonna spill into the next year. But it is what it is. So I watched The Color Purple. It was like January 4th, like very early on. But I really loved it. I'm going to put it in S tier. Now, it's one of those movies where, as I was ranking my movies throughout the year, it was always at the top, like the very top, if not like top 2, top 3, but always in the top 5 the entire year. But then when it comes down to it at the end of the year, it's like, well, that was so early on, it's hard to really say. But I did re-listen to the music a little recently, a little bit of it, and I was reminded how amazing it is, and just how good Fantasia is. Taraji P. Henson's really good. Danielle Brooks is really good in the movie. It's a very powerful movie. It's very, very moving. It starts off pretty slow. It's the first half is kind of hard. I was gonna say rough to get through, but the entire movie is kind of rough to get through. That's kind of the point of the movie. It's not like a feel good movie, but I love the music. It really captures the vibe because there are fun moments, where the music's fun, but overall it's a very heavy movie, and the music really reflects that. Like Fantasia, especially that one of that final ballad that she has, it's really strong, really powerful. And Fantasia was someone back in the day in American Idol I was not rooting for, and now I've really come around on. I'm like, you know what? She killed it. And it was an amazing performance for someone who has never done movies before. She had done this on Broadway, I guess, in the production, but never starred in a movie before. So it was amazing. Yeah, love it. I have never seen the original, though. I will say that. So if there's any like discrepancies or issues that people take with how they remade it, I don't know. I would like to revisit the original sometime for sure. Next up, wow, this is quite the drastic shift in tone here. We're going to Death Note, the live action, like Netflix one, I believe it was. These next few We're all from a thing called the Film Buffs Challenge over on the Discord I'm a part of, which is where we are paired up with someone, and we each assign each other 5 movies from their list of movies you want to watch, plus an additional bonus one that's not on their list if you want to go above and beyond. And then you have to finish them within a 1 month deadline. So these are the next few I did for that reason. So Death Note, horrible. I think the worst movie I've seen in the year 2024. It's really insulting. You know, there's a lot of these adaptations of shows or adaptations of anime that are not ideal. You know, you think of Dragon Ball Evolution, The Last Airbender, and this one are all horrible. So it's not like it's uniquely bad in a way. Like, there's almost commonplace for anime to get that kind of treatment when they try to do the live action. But doesn't make it any less insulting. It was really bad. The reflection of the characters was not good at all. They completely missed the mark, and they changed things thematically to where, like, yeah, at least it's different. It's not just a copy and paste of the anime, but we're doing crazy, stupid shit that has nothing to do with why people love the anime. So at that point, I'm not going to give you a pass, like, oh, you did something different at least. No, it was horrible, and there's no silver lining for me. It was really rough, and acting not great. Next up is Kiki's Delivery Service. This is a super cozy movie. I tell you, like, every time I think of this movie, it just makes me happy. And I didn't feel as passionately about it as some people do, as far as Studio Ghibli movies go. Like, it's commonly one of the favorites, and at least merchandising wise, I see Kiki's Delivery Service stuff all over the place. But I enjoyed it. Overall, the story wasn't as much there as I would have liked, and ultimately doesn't really go anywhere is kind of my issue with it. But for what it is and the vibe, and Debbie Reynolds, shout out one time, I do really like it. But I'm gonna give it a B. And let's not get it twisted. Where I'm at right now, having not filled out this whole thing, I'm thinking B and up is a movie I liked and I would recommend easy. C is like, okay, I could recommend it, or I could like it better on a rewatch type of thing. And then D and F straight up would not recommend. This is kind of where I'm at. Next up is Leave the World Behind. This is a Netflix movie that was actually, I feel like it took off pretty well. I feel like it was one of those movies that was in the top 10 of Netflix. People were talking about it, had a lot of buzz around it, and it's pretty cool. It's kind of like one of those post-apocalyptic type movies, but there's a mystery element to it, to which isn't like fully explained. Like, you don't really get all the answers, and there's like a dark comedy aspect to it. I enjoyed it. It was like one of those movies that keeps you super engaged, like you're in there. I would like to rewatch it though, really, to fully reassess. With a lot of these movies, I'm going to feel that way. That's the only problem with ranking movies. Like, the right after the year's finish, you know, you don't have as much time for reflection. A lot of movies take a couple years in the tank to really sink in whether they stand the test of time or not. For now, I'll put it in B. It could go either above or below Kiki's Delivery Service. I definitely enjoyed it and would recommend checking it out. Treasure Planet. This movie is awesome. It's a Disney movie that is one of those ones where it's not mainstream at all. You know, you either probably watched it when it came out, or you haven't watched it, or unless you're a big Disney fan who's gone through all of them. It's easily one you can miss, because it was one I missed. I never gotten around to it until this year, and this was also thanks to the Film Buffs Challenge. That's the only reason I watched it. So really cool. I really love the vibe of this. You know, Treasure Island as a story in general, the way it's been adapted and things. I haven't seen There's tons of adaptations I haven't seen, but like Black Sails is a rough adaptation of that story, and it's amazing. Treasure Planet is a sci-fi version of it. Really cool. I don't know what it is about the story that lends itself to some great media, but it does. And I gotta say, one of the most underrated villains in Disney history. Iconic. Like, if you really go through all the Disney movies, there's not too many. You know, you have the ones that stand out, always that come to top of mind. You know, the Scars, the Jafars, everything that ends with an R. But most of them are like, generic villain, right? This one's really cool. I like what they did with it. High recommendation. If you're a Disney fan, animation fan, and you haven't seen it, absolutely. I'll put them in S tier. S tier for Treasure Planet. Now, again, the tier list is probably reflective of the year as a whole. I'm going to be honest, I don't think, as much as there are a lot of movies I watched this year, I don't think there was a lot of easy S tier movies in this year as well. So it's interesting if my tier list will move around according to that, or like a different year, Treasure Planet might have been more of an A. I don't know. But I just know it's always been in like my top 5 of the movies I watched this year as I've been ranking them. So it makes sense to me right now to put that in S tier. Next up is Thor: The Dark World. This is not an S tier movie. Thor is interesting. Marvel movies in general, I'm very spotty. Like, I haven't consistently watched like all the movies. Like, for the first stretch of Marvel movies. No, I can't even say that, because Thor I didn't watch until a couple years ago. And then a couple years later, I'm finally getting to Thor: The Dark World. I haven't seen the other Thor movies. I've always heard this one was rough. And I get it. It's not anything to write home about. But I found myself definitely enjoying it more than people like really downing it. I'd say it's easily C tier. I wouldn't go any lower. Because, a couple of things. I remember distinctly still enjoying it, but admittedly not being blown away or not being anything special about it. But also, as I talk about this right now, I hardly remember anything from this movie. So that's got to say something. Next up is a movie called The Ballad of Buster Scruggs, which is a Coen Brothers movie. If you know them, they did No Country for Old Men, Fargo, movies in that kind of vein. If you've seen them, you know the exact kind of style we're going for. This was cool because it was a collection of different stories within it, and all set in like the Wild West setting, but given that Coen Brothers flair. So you really run the gamut of like, some are stronger than others, some of the stories, some are more substantive than others, but they all like hit in different ways. And I love this movie, actually. Something about it just hit me. It's like right up my alley. I'll put it second right now in S tier for real. I love it. I would recommend it for sure. Not much more I can go into, right? And even if I could, there's not like a solid through line of plot to really dive into. It's just a bunch of different stories, so hard to pick apart. But I enjoyed it. That was the last of the Film Buffs Challenge, the first Film Buffs Challenge at least. There was another one later in the year that you'll see. But yeah, from that I was assigned Death Note, Thor: The Dark World, Kiki's Delivery Service, Leave the World Behind, Ballad of Buster Scruggs, and Treasure Planet. So really stretched out. 2 S tiers, 2 B tiers, 1 C, and 1 F, right, from that challenge. Next up is The Holdovers. Such a cozy movie. It really feels good. It feels good. I'll say when I watched it initially, I was not nearly as blown away as some people were. It had so much awards buzz, like, from the previous year, 2023, of like being one of the best movies of the year. And I didn't totally get it. But the more time has passed, the more I'm thinking about it. Like, every time I think about it, I think of it more fondly. I think it's just such a cozy movie, one I could see myself throwing on at other years, like around Christmas time, one of those types. It's a wholesome, sweet story. Great performances. Love it. Paul Giamatti, always I always enjoy, and he was great for this movie. But a couple of other great performances. Not sure the names of the actors for that movie so much, but it's solid. I'm thinking A tier for now. That's kind of where I'm at with it. Next up is a movie called Bob Marley One Love, which I saw in theaters with my girlfriend. This was around Valentine's time. Bob Marley is someone where I've heard very little of his music. He's always intrigued me as an individual, and love it. Reggae is like a blind spot for me in music in general, for the most part, but I love the vibe. So going into this, I was fascinated, and it was cool to see more of his story. And the actor who plays him is really good, a great performance. But a couple things hold it back. It's not a very strong plot, or it doesn't translate well to a movie, the final product they have. And the accent is sometimes hard to make out. I feel like there's more they could have done with that, because that wasn't just me being stupid either. That was a common complaint I heard, that it's just like you miss a lot of dialogue from it. It would seem to be crucial moments, and it's like, I don't know, they could have subtitled certain points or something, but like the accent was pretty spot on, like really really good. It's just tough to make out sometimes if you're not used to it. But ultimately it wasn't great. I'll probably end up putting it in D, because it ends up being a pretty forgettable movie at the end of the day. Hate to see it though. Hate to see it. Cowbells is a Disney Channel original movie that we reviewed over on Tarkaron. Because we had, first of all, we have a series called Chance Time where we spin this wheel behind me with a random assortment of movies that's completely out of our control. And then we had a month called Chaos Month where we did 4 different Chance Time spins, which are the next 4 movies you're going to see. So 4 completely random movies that like I didn't have any say in choosing. So that's why it's like, where did these movies come from? That's why. Cowbell is a Disney Channel original movie, which I did not particularly enjoy. It was fun to like poke fun at and things like that. Obviously, I don't expect the highest quality cinema from a Disney Channel original movie, but when I think of DComs, I think there are some much better ones, and for that, I didn't give Cowbells too many excuses. Maybe we were a little harsh on it ultimately, because it's probably more of an average-ish movie, but as far as movies in the grand scheme of things, I think it's fair to put it in like D tier. D tier for me. All right, I'll keep showing you. Whoa, we're almost forming an F, or no, we're not. Next up is a movie called Kutavam Chikshayam. It's a movie in a Malayalam Indian language, set in India, and it's a very much like no movie magic whatsoever. It's like raw, just like some cops trying to hunt down a couple criminals, and it's like very much, this is what happens and this is what happens next. There's a couple funny moments, but other than that, they don't do much to make it actually cinematic. And to where it was okay, it wasn't horrible, but it's super forgettable. And for the large majority of the movie is really boring, and it's tough to get through until like the final act. They have some stuff that spices things up, but it's not a movie I would ever see myself watching again. For that, I'll put in D tier, just above Cowbells. It's really, you can interchange the two. I wouldn't have a problem with it. Our next up is a movie called All Good Things, which is another random one that we got. It stars Ryan Gosling and Kirsten Dunst, which is based on a true story revolving around their relationship and a guy who is ultimately a serial killer. I found Kirsten Dunst to be really charming in this. Ryan Gosling was pretty solid as well. The movie itself wasn't super standout for me, but I didn't think there was anything too egregious. I think ultimately what it does most is it got me intrigued in the story, the actual real life story. Because just to hear how that ended up was crazy, first of all, but I haven't even watched. There's still the documentary that I wanted to watch, which is I think the story was the documentary came after the fact from the same director of this movie. He got in because of this movie. He was able to get in touch with the actual serial killer and get like an interview, and there was a whole documentary around that, which is crazy how that transpired. But I still want to watch it myself. And so that's the biggest thing from this movie that I took away is that it made me want to watch that, because the adaptation on here, some things was a little weird. It's like I don't know how we were supposed to feel, very conflicted, and I'm not sure if they fully executed the way they wanted to. But I'll put it in C tier right now, below Thor: The Dark World, but it's around there, interchangeable. Next up is a movie called The Assistant. With our little chaos month, this is the last one we did. I feel like we progressively got better. So The Assistant is my favorite of the four that we just discussed. The Assistant is a Malaysian film, and was surprisingly good. It had some fun. I hear that it takes a lot from Fight Club, really, in terms of the plot, but I hadn't seen Fight Club, so I got more out of it. Just some fun twists and turns in the mix, some fun main performances that made it really enjoyable. It was just a fun movie, and I just came out, I was like, that was fun. With the review, I think maybe I was a little too high on it, so I'm torn between a B and a C. I think for now I'll put it at the top of C. That feels more right to me, but it was good. It was good. Next up is Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, which, dang, this is so forgettable. I mean, I took issue with Ghostbusters Afterlife to some extent, being kind of like, we didn't really need this. It was just cashing on the Ghostbusters name. There was a cool moment with the original Ghostbusters in that movie, which I appreciated. In this one, we get more of them, which is cool. But for some reason, it kind of went down a notch for me, because it felt like it really wasted our time with some of this stuff, and it was ultimately pointless. And I felt like I like my reality did not change one bit from before the movie started to when it ended. And when I really like a movie, I want it to have an impact on me. I want it to have me thinking, even if it's a feel good, fun movie. Like The Assistant, had more of an impact on me than Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. I'll put it in D. All right, D for the. It's Alive. This is an old school, like, classic time. Classic time. I forget when it was, but it's like 60s, 70s type movie, horror movie, with this like creepy like baby. It's like a baby gone wrong type shit, and it's like enjoyable for what it's worth. It was like, it's like over the top nonsense. Like, this baby is fucking people up. It's like horrific in that way. But you can tell, like, the budget at the time, they didn't really want to show the baby too much because they couldn't really make it look good. So it was always just kind of like, you don't see it. It happens like in a way where it's off screen, or you'll often be in the baby's perspective, like first person, these little moments to try to make it creepier. So I don't know. Ultimately, it didn't work for me. I remember looking on Letterboxd and people had more favorable views of it, but for me, it just didn't land. I think maybe I could appreciate the campiness of it more, but it didn't seem intentional. So to me, like, the campiness of it. So for that, That brings it down for me to D tier. I'll put it in D tier. Like, I rated it really lowly upon first seeing it. I had a really negative perspective of it, but upon reflection, just the the wacky nature of it, I could maybe put it at the top of D tier for now. Next up is a movie called Challengers. You might have heard of it. A big Zendaya fan. Shout out to Zendaya. I'm trying to see more of her stuff that I haven't seen too. But Challengers, heard a lot of buzz about it, and had to check it out. It was one of those movies that's like very, sexual. The sex part of it, the sexual tension element is like very important to it, and they do those things really well. It's like wow, Tom Holland's got to be like whoa, watching this stuff. It's like Zendaya's on them, and it's getting hot and steamy, I'll tell you. But ultimately, I found myself. This was a year I often found myself doing this, so hopefully you don't get too annoyed with me if some of your favorites don't go as high as they might for you. This was a year where like a lot of the movies that people loved, I didn't feel as strongly about. Challengers being one of them. Like I enjoyed it, but it didn't really sit with me that much. I was like, what did I take away from it? I'm not sure. It's again one of those movies I could definitely like more on a rewatch. I'm not sure though, because for now, C tier for Zendaya. I mean, Zendaya's awesome in it, but for Challengers. Next up is a movie called On the Line, which we did review on Tarkaron. This was another chance time spin at complete random. Damn, Mel Gibson, like the most cursed time to watch a Mel Gibson movie. Well, that was just before the most cursed time, He didn't exactly have the best reputation before, but now it's not. It's even worse. So, but this movie is awful. It is F tier. I'm gonna put it above Death Note because I did rate Death Note lower. On the Line's probably a worse movie, but Death Note I still had more of a visceral reaction to how bad it was. On the Line's a really bad movie, filmed during the COVID era, so you can feel the production. It's a little stripped back. And it's just a really annoying plot, all set in a radio show where someone calls in making these threats, and then you go into this whole story, and then there's plot twist, and not good ones. So, I'm not going into spoilers, but I also would never recommend it, so I don't know why, but just in case, I'm not going into it. The Contestant. The Contestant is a fun documentary that was recommended on our Discord by Ninja Pengu, I believe. He shouted out, and it just on concept sounded really interesting. It's about this guy who they kind of put into this like his own reality show. Like he was told to stay in this room. The longer you stay in the room, you'll eventually get money. But he didn't know how long you'd be in the room, and then you'd have to like earn everything he got was through different like prizes, like raffles and magazines. It was the only way he was able to get anything new in the room. Like he was often without clothes. It was like a really weird, and like it just seemed like morally corrupt as far as like a reality show goes. And it really dives into that. You get his perspective, and you also get like literally the evil corporate person's perspective, like the person who was responsible for it. He had like no remorse, and it was crazy how he was like actually a real life supervillain. But it's an interesting story for sure. I felt like towards the end, like became less satisfying because it went into some stuff after the fact that wasn't as pertinent. But it was just kind of like trying to follow the main guy's life a little bit. But overall, the story is just something you gotta see. I think I would give it B tier, bottom of B tier, maybe top of C tier. We'll see. Next is a movie called The Accused, which was another chance time movie. A lot of them this year. It added a lot of movies to my list, but a lot more miss than hit. But The Accused is a tough one. It's a really amazing performance. It stars Jodie Foster, and she's really good in this. And such like this movie it's a 1988 movie, and it touches on some really tough subjects. Essentially, this isn't a spoiler. This is the entire concept of the movie. It's about a woman who is sexually assaulted um, in a bar, like in a very public setting, with like a whole mob mentality of it. Like there were multiple people involved, and multiple people witnessed it, but didn't do anything. And it was like really, really tough. I can't remember if it was based on a true story or not. I wouldn't be surprised. But tough subject material, and it really like thrusts you right into it, and it makes it a brutal watch. But she's so good with such a vulnerable scene that had to have been so hard to film. Like super long scene, like with no cuts of like her essentially like the event transpiring. You don't see the whole thing, but you see a lot of it, and it plays out. And then a lot of the movie is like a court drama type movie. But the hardest thing about this movie is it's so hard to recommend on this, just because of how hard it is to watch. And I know certain people I would never recommend it to watch because it's even harder for them to watch. I imagine. So it's tough. It's a really powerful, really effective at what it's trying to do. But would I recommend it? Probably not. I don't know. So if you're like up for that kind of material, you're not going in for a good time. But if you want to have something really have an impact on you, that's what movies are about for me. I love just feeling things one way or another. That tells me it's a good movie. So, but it's up to you. I would say the top of C tier. Yeah, that's where I'm at with it. Next up is Mission Impossible, which was a chance time spin we did when we actually met live in person for our 5-year anniversary of the channel. And Mission Impossible I had never seen, and ultimately turned out to be okay. It was fun time, but nothing to really sit and think about too much. Like our review is really short because it's really like, yeah, it's a fun movie, an amazingly iconic theme. The bum 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 bum, iconic. Yeah, it's so good. It's so good, but the movie itself, it's the classic like plot twist type shenanigans going on, and I mean it's fun. Getting some hijinks here, some old school Tom Cruise, but it's not like anything crazy. It didn't make me feel like I needed to go watch all the other million Mission Impossible movies necessarily, but I wouldn't be opposed. For that reason, I'm kind of in a C tier for that as well. Maybe being a little more harsh on here than I was in our reviews and in my scores, but we'll see how it looks if I end up with too much in the C tier or what. Top of C tier for now. Next up is 9/11. This is a documentary that was done a year after 9/11 in 2002. I had heard about it because 9/11, it's just such a tragedy that's like always something really draws me into watching stuff on it. Every so often, every couple years it comes around, and I'm like, and I really dive into stuff, and it's like I look for like documentaries and stuff covering it because it's just so wild. It's such a wild thing, horrible thing. But this documentary I had always been hearing about. Like, this is the one you should check out. It's on YouTube. 9/11. I forget what it is. Something Brothers are the ones that did it, because they were essentially, it's crazy. They were filming a documentary at the time following someone's entry into like becoming a firefighter. They were following this like one guy's journey into becoming a firefighter in New York, and so that was the whole idea of their documentary. And then right in the middle of that, 9/11 transpires, and it's crazy. I think it's worth a watch. It does a good job at capturing just the rawness of it. They were just filming another documentary at the time, so it turned into this. It turned into 9/11 was the documentary. So it's interesting if you want to do more of a deep dive on 9/11. It's always one to check out. And that's probably a B tier for me as well, because there wasn't much to it. It was just so raw and real, because there was nothing played up about it. It was completely unexpected for the filmmakers as well as everyone on film. So it's wild, and some powerful moments in there too. And then we go to Borderlands. Borderlands is not good. It's just not. It's not good. It's a video game series that my brother and I really like playing together, and so we watched it together, and I did not like it at all. I mean, if you've heard anything about it, you've probably heard a lot of negative things about it, because that's not great. It's just not. And that's the thing. When I heard of a Borderlands movie, nothing about it interested me. Nothing about Borderlands. The plot is not why I play Borderlands. It's not like I'm really invested in the story or anything like that. It's just purely for the gameplay, the first-person RPG elements to it that I love, doing different missions and leveling up and all that, different gear. That's what I love. And almost no interest in the story, to be honest with you. Enjoyed it in the moment, just little funny things transpiring, but it's not a story I'm like, oh, I need to get more of this. So a movie never made sense to me, especially when a movie like Mad Max occupies more of the category that it would probably fall into, because the kind of stuff that Mad Max is known for is probably the biggest things that Borderlands would try to capitalize on, but it just didn't work, and then they didn't do it well. So what could I say? Top of F tier. Next up is a movie called American Sniper. Now, this is the start of another Film Buffs challenge from this year. So these next 6 movies are from that as well. American Sniper is one I probably never would have watched. I had it on my list just because I had the DVD lying around. So I just listed all the stuff that I have, and then a couple things that I was looking forward to watching. American Sniper, always a big question mark to me. I had no idea what it was about, really. And it turned out to be not great. Some stuff about it is cool and it's effective, but ultimately it really kind of felt like a propaganda piece on on the American military. And so it gives you a weird feeling afterwards. But yeah, it's not one I would really be eager to watch again. I'll give it top of D tier for you. Next up is a little movie called The Lord of the Rings: The Fellowship of the Ring. This is one of those movies where I had definitely seen a lot of it growing up, pieces here and there. Now, had I ever sat down and watched the whole thing in one sitting? I have no idea. I have no specific recollection of it, and if I did, I was too young to remember. So at that point, I'm like, yeah, this is a fresh viewing experience for me. This is all new enough. Certain things from the zeitgeist of Lord of the Rings, just like with things like Harry Potter, even if you hadn't seen the movies, you're going to know certain plot points just from them being out there. But for the most part, a pretty fresh experience, and I enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to getting into more. I'm hoping to hopefully watch it at least, hopefully to finish up the Lord of the Rings at least this year would be cool. Because I'm really curious to see, because I have no idea which ones are regarded as the best or the worst, or if they're all regarded really well. I have no idea, really. And then The Hobbit I've never gotten into at all. So, but it was great. I think I'll put it right now in B tier. This is interesting because I'm already seeing, looking at this, how I've changed things up from my rankings. Because Lord of the Rings I had much higher than some of the things already above it. And Well, not much higher, but just higher than a couple of things already above it. And then by putting it here, I know more things will go above it as well. So interesting. I don't know. This is just kind of where it feels right to me. Or maybe top of B tier feels right to me. So it's not too crazy. I feel like the holdovers has just kind of gone up from where I had rated it. The Book of Life. Dang, this is one I'm conflicted on. Because I had a lot of fun watching it. But as I was watching it, I knew a lot of it was like, this is not fleshed out enough for me. But there was a certain charm to it. It's a distinct animation style that you don't really see. But it's a movie that's revolved around a lot of music. Except it was a lot of it ended up being a lot of covers, which was really interesting. It was like it took me out a bit when like the main character would start breaking into singing "Creep" by Radiohead. That was like, whoa, did not see that one coming. Like the whole vibe of the movie does not seem like it would be that, but just random covers you don't expect. So not really original music. It's interesting timing because I was a big Us the Duo fan, and they had their biggest song, "No Matter Where You Go," was featured prominently in this movie, and that's what I always remembered about it, because I just remembered them posting that here's the music video from The Book of Life, and I just have never watched it. But then, ironically, after I watched it this year, they then had a big breakup, or that was before it. I'm not sure exactly. It was around that time that they did though, and crazy, but. I enjoyed it though. It's so tough. It's tough because I did enjoy it, but some of the stuff just didn't work for me as far as like the plot and certain decisions the characters make. But it's definitely one I would watch again just for fun. Let's do C tier. Top of C tier. Now I'm really shaking things up. Because I definitely did not have the Book of Life above the last few things right below it. But it is what it is. All right. Dune. Dune, I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed it when I watched it. Now, like I tried watching it previously, and it was just like way too slow for me. Immediately, I was kind of zoned out, and it is very slow in the beginning. It is very slow, but as you get into it, it's really cool. They do a really great job at bringing this world to life on the screen. I'm torn between A and B. A is tempting just because there's an open space there, but I think, honestly, I'm at B right now, top of B. Come on. That's where I'm at with it. But as far as if you're a sci-fi fan, like, and you really want something to really sink your teeth into, that's probably up your alley. And I'm sure the books are good for that, too. Black Panther. It was the first time I'd seen Black Panther, thanks to the Film Buffs Challenge. And it's an S tier for me, right at the top. Like, believe it or not, I know some people feel this way. I've heard really love the movie. Some people aren't as passionate about it, but it's one of my favorite Marvel movies. Like, outside of the big heavy hitters like Infinity War and No Way Home, this might be at the top of, like, especially for like introducing a character in its standalone movie. You take like an Iron Man, Thor, Spider-Man Homecoming, like all these kinds of movies. It's probably at the top for me. I really love Wakanda and everything they did with it to make it such a cool place. Like, they really brought a unique life to it, like a unique personality to it, and infused culture into it that really is cool. Like, there's like fictional but also real elements to it, because I believe even in the universe, the Marvel universe, is still like it's in Africa, right? But it's just like a non-existent area that, like, in the Marvel universe, it's even hidden to people. It's really cool. And like, there's certain technology to it. The story is awesome. The characters, the villain, the villain's really cool. It's effective. Some great action sequences in here. Just love it. I loved it. I'm looking forward to Wakanda Forever, though. It's bittersweet. I don't know how exactly they pulled that off, but we'll have to see. Atlas. Atlas is a movie starring Jennifer Lopez, a Netflix movie that came out in 2024. This one I certainly never would have watched if not for film buffs. And my partner, this is the one that the bonus movie he assigned me that I didn't have on my list. So it was complete out of left field. And unfortunately, I didn't like it. Unfortunately, I did not like it. It was J-Lo. You would expect all J-Lo's movies are killer, right? You would expect it to be better. But it's right there. It's right in the bottom 3 in some order. It's just there's some parts where they were like kind of interesting. It was almost because you're like following J-Lo's character mostly by herself, but then interacting with this AI element. But then the lesson we learned at the end of the day is I'm kind of conflicted on like what are we taking away from this? I don't know. It just didn't work for me. But if you want Jennifer Lopez in a mech suit, talking to the mech suit, by all means, check it out. Next up is The Pumpkin Carver, which is a Chance Time movie we randomly spun and we reviewed on the channel, Tarkaron as well. It's another not great one. It's, I'll give it this. I'll give it top of F tier. In terms of, like, the movie itself, it's not done well. The production value is not great. Obviously, a very low budget movie in general, which is whatever, but the execution is just like horrible acting and lousy plot. Doesn't really tell itself very well. It doesn't really go anywhere interesting. Some stuff was fun. It was fun to make fun of, like the cheesiness of like the kills and stuff. But overall, it was not nothing of substance or value that I could really take from it. But I will give it over the other F tier movies that I had more fun with it, just from the nonsense. I'd have more fun with it. So next up is a movie called Past Lives. I love this movie. I'm gonna put it right in S tier, right up there. It's in some order in this S tier. I know that for sure. I went back and forth between like the top 5-ish area throughout the year, but right now I'm right here with it out of the movies so far. I love the movie. It's hard to say too much about it. Just know it's ultimately it's a story about 2 childhood friends, and it's like a will they, won't they element to it. They kind of have they go separate ways when they're young, and then they rekindle their friendship, find each other online, and then I'll just say you watch what happens from there. But it's like it's not like a predictable love story type. It just has a really interesting take on love that I thought was really powerful and really worked for me. I thought it was really real. It felt real to me, to some extent. There's not people in everyday life. A lot of people aren't nearly as mature as the people shown in this movie in some of the situations here. But the beauty of it is like the way they approach the idea of love and of past lives, which is a concept they get into in the movie. It's like really beautiful. So high recommendation. It was another one that had like right up there with The Holdovers. It had some award buzz, not as much, but the previous year, 2023. Next up is The Wild Robot. And put that at the top of A tier. It's a beautiful movie. Like, first of all, visually beautiful. There's a lot to really just love in every screen. It's very much the Puss in Boots: The Last Wish art style kind of thing, and some stuff is like, wow, it just really takes you out with how good it is. In the movie, the story itself is sweet. It's a sweet movie. It's heartwarming, and it was completely unexpected for the year. Like, I remember getting previews for The Wild Robot in stuff like Big Brother, which Big Brother is often notorious for, like, if they have a sponsor in there, it's probably not great. Especially the movies are usually bad. So and they kept seeing The Wild Robot all over the Paramount Plus commercials and CBS and all that. And so it's like, gotta see what this is about. it seems pretty cool, but like I'm hesitant because of that link there, and it's not an amazing movie that, or I don't think anyone saw it coming as such an amazing movie. That's like, for me, the best animated movie of the year, pretty easily. That came out that year. Of course, Treasure Planet, objectively way better, right? No. Well, Robot Killer. Check it out. If you like animation, period, that's pretty much all you need. Beetlejuice. This is one I watched the original with my girlfriend in the drive-in theater, like not too long ago, a couple years ago, which was interesting because then it teed us up for this one coming out this year. And dude, if you want some weird fucking shit, this is the movie for you. And I like my weird fucking shit, but it didn't really. It's not gonna go too high in my rankings because it's nothing to write home about. As far as the sequel goes, it's crazy. First of all, it's like how many years? It's decades later than the original. It just doesn't. It doesn't do anything super worthwhile to make it like we needed this return. It plays with a couple fun ideas, still fun performances, but ultimately just wacky shit. So if you want weird shit, it's just constantly weird shit happening. That was so weird. Like it's really. I mean, that's what Beetlejuice is, but for me, it's probably gonna be a C tier down here, down below Thor: The Dark World. That's kind of where I'm at with it. Emily the Criminal. I watched this movie for Aubrey Plaza, which is, it is what it is. That's. I just like Aubrey Plaza. I think she's cool. So this movie, I was curious about because I didn't know much about, but I saw her obviously promoting it and whatnot. And it's one of those like lower budget movies, not mainstream theater movies, but ultimately some stuff worked, some stuff didn't for me. I didn't think the story was too compelling, and it's nothing to write home about. I thought Aubrey Plaza was pretty cool in this movie. I liked her vibe, but overall the story, there wasn't that much there to like really make it super interesting. But it wasn't bad by any means. I'm thinking right around C tier. Right above Thor: The Dark World, alright? Now, it sucks because I just watched an Aubrey Plaza movie again because Aubrey Plaza, and I feel much more highly about that one. And it is a movie that came out in 2024, but I just didn't watch it in 2024. I just watched it in January this year. So it won't be in the rankings until the end of the year. Hopefully I can do a video on it at some point, but it's called My Old Ass, if you've heard of it. It's really good. Highly recommend if you're an Aubrey Plaza fan. I would give that my highest recommendation. She's not in the movie too much, but still, when she is, it's really good. Oh, Joker, Folie à Deux. Come on, Joker. The first Joker is really good, and like it aged better for me. Over time, I appreciate it more and more. Upon initially watching it, I was a little conflicted because the feelings it's like, are we supposed to be rooting for him? Or are we not? And he's like a horrible person, but you feel bad for him. So it was cool, like a villain origin story. But then it's like, it's wild. Oh, I'll just say this: what the criticism that people started having for Joker Folie à Deux, where it's like, makes you feel bad for liking Arthur in the original. I don't agree with that really. Because I don't think you should have liked Arthur in the original. I just don't. Like, morally, there's no reason to... Like, you can hate that he was, like, bullied or whatever, but when you're at the point of murdering people in front of other people or on live TV, it's like, well, yeah, obviously you shouldn't be rooting for that. It's not... I don't think I never thought the first movie was trying to get you to be like, yeah, that was killer. It was supposed to have these conflicted feelings in it, and that was like what made the movie so heavy is like, yeah, you feel bad for how it got to that point. You can see that about anyone that goes wrong like that. Like, you hate their upbringing brought them to that, but then you aren't rooting for them. But like once they make the horrible decisions, And so Joker Folie à Deux was not about that for me. It was just about the execution. I thought the story was boring. I thought the movie was boring, plain and simple. It pretty much entirely is set in prison where Arthur is held. And then you have this little love story with Lady Gaga as Harley Quinn, which is not super compelling to me because it's kind of like she saw him, she fucked with his crazy clearly, and they were in with each other. A really creepy like sex scene as well, but it's like they were into each other and that was about it. It wasn't like anything much more to it that really brought me in. It was like nothing, no, not much of substance there. And then the whole musical element of it just didn't work for me. It just kept like they would do cutaways to different like musical numbers and whatnot. And there was like one in the courtroom that was pretty good. Other than that, there was like, okay, I didn't get anything out of them either. So I would say a couple of those scenes in the courtroom itself were probably the most effective. But other than that, it's really a shame what they did with this movie. But in my opinion, top of F. Hocus Pocus. This is a really fun movie. I really liked it. It's the first time I've seen it. It's always been one of those cozy, like, go-to Halloween movies, Disney movies, that, like, up there with Halloween Town. Often seen it referred to as one of those. And I totally get it. Their personalities, their performances are great. Just really get you into it. That's what sells the whole movie. Like the story itself isn't that interesting, but it's their performances that really kill it. And for that reason alone, it's the top of B tier, maybe. I don't know. I'm rearranging some shit. I mean, that's gonna happen when you have 53 things, and like, so for context, I have a Letterboxd account where you can check out I do individual reviews after every movie I watch and individual ratings. And then throughout the year, I'll have an ongoing list of ranking all the movies that I watched that year. And I'll add them in and slightly change them throughout the year. But usually doesn't change too much. So then upon reflection, it might turn out different here. I don't know. It's tough. I'm conflicted on some of these, but there's a lot of them. So it's hard to be confident in one order. So makes sense. Next up is a movie called We Live in Time, starring Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh. It's one of those movies where it's emotional and it hits. It's effective. Their relationship, their dynamic is really good. They have really good chemistry, and I appreciate them for that. And they have some vulnerable moments that are really effective. The movie does stuff really well. I don't think it's like, oh Jesus, God damn this chair. I don't think it like quite gets into the top tier, like upper echelon of movies. I don't know. It's like right on the cusp between A and B for me for this year. I think for now I'll settle on B tier, right at the top, or right below Hocus Pocus for now. It's just kind of how I feel. But really, if you want one of those movies, it's like about a relationship with like emotion to it, some heaviness, but some lighthearted moments as well. Like that's the kind of movie you want right there. Like it'll make you feel something, that's for sure. And I love that in a movie. Next up, it's the one you've all been waiting for. It's the Disney Holiday Sing-Along. This is pretty much purely by technicality that it's like technically a movie, so it's on this list. So, but not much there. Probably the bottom of, or the top of D tier, I guess, because the music's decent. It's like features performances essentially of some artists singing songs. Like, you know, they had Halle Bailey and Chloe Bailey singing a song. I forget everybody else who sang a song, but yeah, nothing that interesting though. Ryan Seacrest hosts. I don't know. It is what it is. Smile 2. Ironically, I hadn't seen Smile 1, but we were like at a point where we were watching a ton of movies in theaters, so we were looking for one to watch and a horror movie to watch. And so it's like, all right, F it. It doesn't seem like you need to watch the first one from what I've heard, so that's what I went for. And some stuff was really effectively creepy, super creepy. Some really unsettling scenes in this movie. And the main actress's performance, sorry, her name escapes me right now, is really, really good. Super memorable performance, purely. Great showcase for her talent. But the movie itself, like some of the ways the story goes, kind of fall flat. It's all just kind of, the intrigue comes with her and how she's handling things. Outside of that, there's not too much compelling for me. So I'm going to put it in C tier. Probably right below For the Dark World. Again, right there above Beetlejuice. It's kind of where I'm feeling. Next up is a movie called Here, which stars Tom Hanks. Now, this is a hot take. I'm going to put it in A tier. People have been very critical of this movie because apparently there's some use of AI in it or something, which, I don't fuck with AI like that, especially when it comes to like some of the shit they're pulling with like replacing like voice actor roles with AI and shit like that. I really hate that stuff. So I totally get it. I get some of the biggest takeaways from people who don't like the movie are that like it looked fake to me. I remember hearing that where it's like they were just turned off just from the look of it because Tom Hanks obviously I think that was the primary use of it to make him look younger. But so I get it. I totally get it. But for me, I got to be honest with myself. And my initial reaction when I came out of the theater is like I really liked it. I thought it had an impact on me. It was just a sweet message. And artistically, I thought it was really cool. And so when I go on and I see Letterboxd, it's very mixed. I think 3 stars was the average, at least last time I looked. So right down the middle. Some people use it very highly, some very lowly, and some in the middle. So when I saw that, I was like, oh man, that's a shame. And I don't want to, as much as I like to consider other people's perspectives, I don't want to let it taint mine too much. If I like something so much and so I come out and people don't, I don't want to be like, actually, I guess it wasn't that good. So while it might have come down a little bit in my head because of certain things, it still was really good for me and like what I enjoy from movies. I want to feel something, and I felt something at the end of it. I don't know, maybe it just struck a certain note for me that I needed to. I loved the idea that the entire movie was set with one camera angle for the entire movie. You're seeing the perspective of like this house. So the house is a centerpiece. It's like a living room is what the camera angle is. But then you'll jump through time. You'll jump through time to different periods from like centuries and centuries difference. All centered on this spot. So sometimes there's not a house there if it was before the house was built. Sometimes the house looks really old school, sometimes very modern, jumping through time. I just really liked artistically the decision there, and then ultimately how they wrap everything up. I just thought it was cute, and it was a feel good type of movie with some heart to it, and I liked it a lot. So I'm gonna give it a shout out because no one talks about Here, and if they do, it's probably for the negative things. So I get it, but I enjoyed it, so that's where I'm at with it. Next up is a movie called Stitch, the movie. I'm a big Lilo and Stitch fan. And it's big recently for me as well because for our TV challenge we've had going on, I've had to watch Lilo and Stitch the series, the first season, which is one I grew up watching episodes here and there. So it was nostalgic for me in that way, but for the most part, it's very fresh. So a lot of Stitch on the brain. I'd watched this beforehand because I watched it in 2024, and it's pretty much like the intro to the Lilo and Stitch the series, pretty much. So I enjoyed it for what it's worth. Doesn't have as much substance as Lilo and Stitch, of course, but it it does a really good job of teeing off Lilo and Stitch the series and making you interested in, like, oh, that's gonna be fun. They gotta go find all these experiments. So it's cool. It's cool. Probably right in the middle of C tier is fine. It's hard to really say that's better than a lot of these movies. Next up is Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. I'm going to throw right into A tier. This is one, again, like I rated it on Letterboxd. It's a 5-star scale. I rated it 3.5. Which, I don't know. I might go up a little bit from it here. And this reflects that. And it just feels appropriate to me in A tier. When I'd heard about it, I'd often heard it in the same discussions, same conversations as like the Naked Gun movies, which I love. They're near and dear to me. The Naked Gun, one of my favorite movies ever, one of my favorite comedies ever. And so that's what the intrigue was. And then I got into it, and the comedy is completely different, which was fine because it ended up just being great. It was not only the comedy is completely different, but it was still funny. The characters, our two main characters, are great. Their dynamic is awesome. And it ends up actually being a cozy movie. It's like simultaneously really frustrating at points, and it's supposed to feel that way, but also really cozy. So I could see this one being one I throw on a lot as well, because it's a Thanksgiving time movie. You don't have many of those, so it really fits the vibe of the end of the year. So really great. I love it. John Candy, who played one of the lead roles here, is really good in it. And yeah. Inside Out 2. Inside Out 2 is one of the ones that people speak so highly of. So highly of. And it wasn't that deep for me. it was like, yeah, I appreciated the whole portrayal of like a panic attack, which is what people often give it credit for. I really like that. Some really cool stuff with the like the different animation styles they use for her like secrets that she pushed away in the back of her mind. The dynamic between anxiety and the other emotions, and how it's like everything's perfectly reflective of like how anxiety works. You know, it's overriding the other emotions, throwing logic out the window. It's great. I love how they do all that stuff, but it just wasn't it wasn't like top tier movie of the year for me, but still enjoyed it quite a bit. So for me, it's going to end up in B tier. Probably, let's put it at the bottom of B tier for now. It could go anywhere. This whole B tier could probably be a sliding scale, like Inside Out 2. I could very easily put it at the top of this tier list, and I wouldn't be surprised by that. That wouldn't seem offensive to me. Next up is Meet Me Next Christmas. This is a Netflix original movie starring Christina Milian. And let's be honest, it is basically like a Hallmark Christmas movie. The story is not like amazing by any means. There's nothing, you know, that it's not that deep. But I really liked it. The biggest thing is, you know, the element I haven't talked about yet is that it's all centered on Christina Milian needs to find tickets to a Pentatonix concert so she can meet the love of her life. That's basically the story. She meets someone, she breaks up with her boyfriend eventually because of something, and then she needs to meet the love of her life, who they said they would meet at this Pentatonix concert if they were single. So it was wild. I am a big Pentatonix fan, for context. So that's where I heard of the movie. They were promoting it and everything. And it's just wild. As someone who's been there with them for like a decade now, it's to see them now be like the subject of, not only like in a movie, but the subject of the movie is about their concert. A great song, by the way, from the Meet Me Next Christmas. Is really good. But I thought the movie was so cute. I thought it was sweet. It's a feel good, cozy movie for me. That's definitely a cozy Christmas movie I could see having on in the household for years to come. Honestly. And I thought Christina Milian, unironically, was amazing. I thought she showed a lot of charm in this movie. Really charming and charismatic. So I thought she was great. A great fit for it. And for that, it's objectively probably not better than some of these movies in the top of C tier, but I do ultimately land at the bottom of B tier. Gotta be honest. At the end of the day, it's about your enjoyment. For me, when I'm ranking a tier list, it's not about like what's objectively the best. I don't think anyone would take these movies and put them in this order for objectively the best, but it's about my enjoyment combined with quality as well, obviously factored in. Wicked. No one mourns the wicked. Wicked is one I just keep thinking more and more fondly of. Amazing music, awesome performances from Ariana Grande and Cynthia Erivo. As someone who had never seen Wicked, like obviously the production I'd never seen, I didn't really know much about it other than that it was based on The Wizard of Oz. It blew me away. It really did, and it was so much fun. Beautiful production. In terms of just that, it's a cinematic achievement. The two performances are killer, and they carry the movie hard. The music I still listen to this day. I still have it playing pretty regularly. So this is not where I'm going to put it. I'm going to put it in S tier. I'm just torn on where. This is not where I had it before on my ranking. I'm going to put it number 3. That's crazy. It just jumped up big time for me, but it was always very high in my rankings, but damn, so good. It's so good, though. That feels right to me, just in the middle of S tier. Wow, okay. Okay, here's a movie called If. It came out in 2024, but my brother really liked it, so he wanted me to see it. I feel bad when I don't link up with someone who really enjoyed a movie. I don't feel the same way. You never want that. I never choose to do that. But ultimately, it just didn't really work for me. First of all, I wasn't really a fan of the animation of style of like the different imaginary friend designs. And the story itself, like the way they executed it, wasn't super compelling to me. And like the emotional payoff didn't really work for me too much to where I know it was supposed to, or they intended it to. I just don't have super high feelings on it. Yeah, pretty forgettable for me overall. So I might be a little harsh in saying this, but it's the top of D tier for me. I don't know. It just didn't do anything to stand out for me. And I thought Ryan Gosling was just kind of there, and I don't know. There's just something missing for me. Moana 2. Ooh. Moana 2 is not good. And I hate that, like, even on Letterboxd, like, people who review movies, it's, like, average score, which is, like, pretty unfair to me. Like, it really gets a bump. And I think if some of these people really reevaluated, some of the people that reviewed it higher, if you took off the Moana skin, it would probably drop, like, three whole points, at least. It gets such a boost just from the Moana name that people are blinded by the fact that it's not a good movie at all. It's really, really poorly done in terms of like the story. It's really half-assed. Just like felt like, oh, let's come up with an excuse to go out on another adventure. It wasn't particularly compelling, and you could tell that it was originally intended to be a Disney Plus series, and they just kind of shoehorned it into a movie at the last minute. The music was awful. Lin-Manuel Miranda's absence was really felt there. Yeah, and it just was not, ultimately, even like the grand finale was like nothing. It felt like nothing to me. And the whole movie, I really have a movie where I'm just sitting so still and nothing, and I feel nothing for almost anything that's happening. And it's childish humor, which felt like, obviously it's a movie geared toward a lot of kids. The original Moana, not only super successful in theaters, but incredibly crazy successful on streaming. It's almost always in the top of the charts for streaming every week, literally. So it makes sense that this was immediately just going to be a success, no matter how good the movie was. They fumbled hard for me, but it's whatever. They won't learn their lesson for it because they got $1 billion from it. Come on. But for me, it's an F tier movie, easy. This is where does it fall? Probably just right there, below Joker Folie à Deux, above The Pumpkin Carver. Next up is Deadpool 2. I'd previously seen Deadpool and really loved it, just hadn't gotten around to 2, but I wanted to make sure to watch Deadpool 2 so that I could watch Deadpool and Wolverine when that came out. And I love it. It's an A tier for me. I think, not to speak on Deadpool and Wolverine yet, but at least the first 2 Deadpools were excellent. I love the humor and the way it's so unique from other comic book movies, and it just hits for me. And I thought the dynamic of Deadpool and Cable in here was really cool as well, and a couple of fun characters thrown in the mix there. Next up, this isn't really a movie, but another technicality. Is like, yeah, it's a TV movie thing. It's called Defying Gravity, which I watched a bit after watching Wicked, but it was originally like a preview for Wicked. I'm glad I watched it after the fact because I would have kind of been annoyed to watch it before, because it shows, it spoils some of the songs. You hear a lot of it, a little too much for me. And like them talking about it, I'd rather see it after the fact. But yeah, nothing really there to write home about. In fact, I put it probably right there with the Disney Holiday Sing Along. Not that it's bad, it's just, a bit of a nothing burger. Next up is Deadpool and Wolverine. We're getting towards the real end of the year here. They were all really last minute, like around December watches here, I believe. Deadpool and Wolverine, I don't feel as highly about as the first 2 Deadpool movies. To me, the plot itself, there's not really that much going on that really engages me. I think it's really driven by fan service, and the comedy is still fun, but I think fan service is a much bigger part of it in this movie. I loved Wolverine. I loved Hugh Jackman, though, like especially that scene in the car in the Honda Odyssey. Not just the over the top fight, which was fun, but the whole speech leading up to that Wolverine had was like so good. Like Hugh Jackman gave it his all, and obviously it's effortless for Ryan Reynolds. Always killer as Deadpool. Doesn't need to be said. So it's just cool to see Hugh Jackman back. But if you look at the story itself as a movie, it's missing something there to really elevate it for me, but still fun. So for me, I'm at top of B tier. It's almost neat to put it right below Deadpool 2, but I don't think it's quite an A tier for me. I don't know. I'm conflicted on it. A couple of these movies in B tier I could see going above Deadpool and Wolverine, but I'm really shaking things up then. But for now, I'll say that. Sonic the Hedgehog 3. This is one I didn't feel nearly as passionately as other people did about it. I liked it, but I guess I was more passionate about Sonic the Hedgehog 2 because I had no expectations coming from Sonic 1. I actually didn't like the original Sonic movie in 2020, but Sonic 2 just hit way more for me. So coming to Sonic 3, it was more the same, but it's impressive they kept the quality. And I guess for Sonic fans, it generally works a lot better because not only the shadow element, but because it's based on like actual game story, and so like the whole Maria thing of it all. But to me, it didn't translate as well to just a standalone movie experience. As someone who didn't play Sonic Adventure 2 Battle, I know generally some of the Maria plotline, but it wasn't like I wasn't emotionally invested in any way. So that's how I felt. The Gerald and Robotnik stuff, it was fun. Having Jim Carrey have 2 different roles, that was fun. Sometimes it was a bit too much for me, But generally, it was a fun time, that dynamic, and he was clearly having some fun with it. But for me, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, I'll put it at the bottom of B tier. I'm really shaking things up. Like, some of these ones in the middle here were not above these, but this is feeling right to me right now. Next up is Mufasa the Lion King. I always wanted the bruv. That's the song I always remember. Like, if you've seen that movie, it's like it's crazy how he hits the bruv on that song. Some of the music was pretty nice, pretty catchy. I actually liked it quite a bit. I mean, Lin-Manuel Miranda's presence was felt here much more. Like, you can tell he had a positive impact on this and a negative impact on not being in Moana 2. It's very clear to see. Like, the music's much better comparatively, but I don't think it's necessarily the most amazing music either. But I thought the story was a lot more fun. Obviously, much better than Lion King 2019, because that one was just a remake with no added substance. This one was a fun, different journey with like a fun little adventure where you have a group of friends coming together kind of thing, and I liked it. The problem is the animation style still, it doesn't make sense. Like, I found myself thinking throughout the movie, like, why this could just be better as the original animation style of The Lion King, honestly. Because there's still, like, they made it more expressive, very, very clearly more expressive for the lions, but just still, it's nothing compared to the personality that the original is able to capture. And with a fun journey like this, probably would have been cool. But generally, I did enjoy it. The Timon and Pumbaa stuff was really annoying, and I wish they just cut that all out. But overall, I had fun with it. Bottom of B tier. Sonic 3 and Mufasa, ironically, they came out same day, and I watched them like a week apart from me. But they were very similar in my mind. Like, they occupy almost the same spot in every time I go to rank them. So it makes sense. Right now, I'm like kind of torn between putting them at the top of C or the bottom of B. So that's where I'm at with it right now. Next up is Nosferatu. This is one, admittedly, I again didn't like as much as people thought, but admittedly, I don't think I was in that headspace that I should have been for a movie like this. And I really feel like on a rewatch, I could like it much more, like really much more on a rewatch. And so, like, my ranking's gonna look harsh, but I don't think it's really a reflection of the movie. It feels like a cop out to say that, but that's just genuinely how I feel. I think, like, because I was dozing off at parts, I wasn't fully invested in a way that I should have been. And in my headspace for a movie like this, you have to be dialed in. And that's one creepy motherfucker, though. The Count. He's one creepy motherfucker. And he's fucking wrong for that. He's a dirty motherfucker. Alright, but where do I put it? Does that feel right? The top of C? I'll put it at the top of C for now. Upon a rewatch, I will definitely reevaluate. But do I think it's objectively worse than Mufasa, Sonic the Hedgehog 3, Meet Me Next Christmas? No. But just in terms of enjoyment, that's kind of where I'm at with it. In fact, let me put Mufasa and Sonic 3 down here and C. And I'll put Nosferatu at the top of C. Here, how's that for a shake-up? I don't know. It just feels like Nosferatu already being in C is pretty rough. I don't think it deserves it. Like, especially the main actress's performance is really incredible. And another one, a lot of performances I've been seeing recently where the actress has to be super vulnerable in some of these scenes, and she's like super on point. Like, I think of Nicole Kidman. I just watched Baby Girl, and similar vibe. It's like, wow, you really like bearing it all for all to see in super vulnerable positions and completely committed to the craft. Major respect for that. So Nosferatu deserves better, I know. So, but that's all I'm at. That's where I'm at. Dune Part 2. Crazy. This year's crazy. Another one where I didn't feel as passionately as people who did, and is an amazing movie, probably objectively. Production wise, it was quite an achievement. Like, just visually, seeing everything they put on screen and how it really did an amazing job of transporting you into that world. Amazing. We got to see more of Zendaya, which is cool. For me, like, upon initial reaction, Dune, the original, had more of an impact on me. But Dune Part 2, like, I think is probably objectively the better movie. But for that reason, I enjoyed Dune the original more. So I'm inclined to put it just right below it. It's hard to really say it's too much worse. But I'm actually going to put Dune Part 2 below Kiki's Delivery Service. Look, we're going purely on vibes here. The vibes have driven this ranking. Like, as much as I'm informed by, like, either previous reviews or previous ratings that I've done of these films, it's ultimately the vibe I'm feeling right now. After now being in January, having the full context of the year, this is kind of where I'm at. I think just like my last tier list I did, I'm going to leave it at that, not do too much rearranging, because you get into the nitty gritty, it's not really worth it. It's just the general, this is the concept of how I feel about these movies and my year as a whole. So yeah, a lot heavy in the middle tiers. Really balanced, maybe a little too balanced. Maybe want to have more of the S and A tiers in the next year, might be my goal. But I was harsher on some movies as well that people would have easily put up there. So sue me. But there it is. It's my movies from the year. Let me quickly go over to the TV shows. Now there are 7 TV shows that are not reality that I'll be ranking very briefly. All right. This is in the order I finished them. First up is the Imagineering story, which is essentially the origin story of, like, Disney World, and then the Imagineers, and really going through the years and different, like, eras and how, like, leadership changed, and behind the scenes for the Imagineers, how, like, they went through some hardships and overcame them and things like that. It's a really well-made documentary. The only thing pulling it back for me is that it's always a weird feeling when it's a documentary about a company put out by that company. Like, you're not getting the full story. You're not going to get... They had some of the negative stuff, which I was surprised to see, but you're not going to get really, really dirty stuff out of it as you might want to see from a documentary really getting into the nitty-gritty. But I did enjoy it. And I love getting the concept. Like, I've never been to Disney World, but I've always loved the idea of it and looking into it. And hopefully one day I will go. It's always been a goal of mine, but I'm going to put it in B tier for now. As if I'm going to be rearranging these 7 all day long. Next up is The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live. This is a miniseries following a couple of key characters from The Walking Dead, some fan favorite characters. I know a lot of people returned just to watch this that hadn't watched The Walking Dead in years. But as someone who stuck with Walking Dead all throughout and loved how they wrapped it up, like, the last couple of seasons were excellent to me. Some people missed out on those. I really appreciated this miniseries. Is excellent. I thought it was an S tier for me. I loved it. I think it really had a fun exploration of this relationship, and gave us some more. Like, definitely some more closure in a way that I appreciated. Next up is The Walking Dead, Dead City. This is season 1. There's going to be another season at least of this. I don't know if it'll keep going or what. But it's another couple characters from The Walking Dead, a spin-off series after the fact. And I really enjoyed this one as well. For now, I'm going to put an A. I think this is one... Both of these series I watched very early on in the year, so some of the details are more blurry. The Ones Who Live just stood the test of time more for me. It's more memorable, so that was easy to put up an S. Dead City, I remember being right up there with me. Like, I loved both of them. But I really need to do a rewatch or like when I do rewatches of shows, it's really like watching people's reactions to it. It gives me essentially a bit of a rewatch while doing so. So I want to watch more reactions and kind of let it settle. What are my real thoughts on it? Like, next up is Quiet on Set, the dark side of kids TV, I think it was called. This is the big documentary that went super viral, talking about the mistreatment of a lot of the casts of these old school Nickelodeon shows in terms of like actual pedophiles on set. There's a couple points. That's not the entire focus of the series. Just also general. There's also just general criticism of Dan Schneider and how he treated his employees. Some creepy stuff, some weird power stuff, like, and then the heaviest stuff that works the most is like the Drake Bell stuff towards the end, which I'm sure you've heard about if you've heard about this series at all. They did a follow-up episode like after the fact, like after this season was released, which I thought was pretty lackluster and unnecessary. But in terms of the series itself, it was pretty good. Really gave some insight, and it makes you really look back on some of those series differently, knowing that like some of the actors that were child actors at the time, how conflicted or completely negatively they feel about their time looking back. So it's tough. It's tough for people who grew up on these shows, for sure. Bit of a reality check, but I think it was important. It's going to be bottom of B tier for me. Knuckles, the miniseries, it's ass. It's ass. F tier. Sorry. If anyone tells you otherwise, they're lying. They're lying. It was like, I never needed a miniseries. I never had any desire for a spin-off series based on Knuckles from the Sonic the Hedgehog live-action movies. Like, Knuckles was cool and all in Sonic the Hedgehog 2, but did I need a whole miniseries? No. And then the miniseries was not, it's called Knuckles, but it's not really about Knuckles. It's centered on a character named Wade Whipple, which I just hated the humor. I thought it was really cringy. Pretty much the entire series. There was one episode that was maybe pretty good where he does a little production, and even all that didn't work for me. But it was just a bad series in my opinion. Mob Psycho 100 season 1, I'm feeling a C tier for that. Could be B tier as well. Like, I enjoyed certain episodes that I really enjoyed, and then other ones it just didn't do much for me. And then when I look at it as a whole, it's not one I'm super invested in. I have a rotation of shows I'm going through where essentially this was my random animated show that popped up, so I watched a season of it. Once I finish, then I give myself the option: do I want to continue right into season 2, or do I want to swap it out of the rotation for another animated show? And I swapped it out because I just didn't feel too passionately about it, and so I think that's pretty telling. But I think it definitely has room to grow and be higher on my list with future seasons, so just probably won't anytime soon be getting into those. Lastly is Shogun, and I saved the last for best. Yes, right. Shogun is an excellent series. Absolutely highest recommendation for me of this list. Walking Dead: The Ones Who Live is right up there with it, but obviously it's much more niche. Like, a specific community will like that. Shogun, you have to like this kind of show. It's like in the same vein of like Black Sails for pirates, Vikings for Vikings, Game of Thrones early seasons. It's a drama, also period piece, very character driven, and that's exactly what I love in shows. And when you can make me feel something, that's what I love. And Shogun definitely made me feel things. I was invested in the characters. There were some really cool relationships explored here, and the production in general was stellar. Some of the best production of a show in recent memory. Did such a good job of transporting you into that world and into that time period with these characters, and I loved it. Highest recommendation. There it is. TV shows and movies for the year. They're all ranked. Let me know your thoughts. What are some hot takes on this list? Do you disagree? What do you disagree with? What do you agree with? All right. These are all just my experiences in this year. So there's a decent amount of 2024 sprinkled in there, but largely not. a ton of other stuff that I just happened to watch in the year. So this is my little wrap up. Had fun talking through it with all you. Some good stuff. Hopefully even more good stuff for 2025. All right. Until next time, subscribe to the channel for more movie and TV related content. I will be having a reality TV ranking as well coming not too far from now. And thank you. Thank you for watching.